Hello there and welcome to the Colts Boutique Show. I'm your host Daniel Patterson. With us today is the founder of the soon-to-be live app Zero Emission Ride Hailing Arrive, and someone who is passionate about the proposition, product and people, Hans Manku. Hans, thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Have you had a good day so far today?
Yeah, Thursdays is the day I get into the gym nice and early, get that out of the way.
Okay.
So yeah, it's had a good session and hopefully this is another good one.
I'm sure it will be. It should be even better. You know, I won't be putting you through your paces as much.
Okay, as long as I'm not out of breath.
No. All right, so if you could explain, what is Arrive and when can we expect Arrive to go live?
Sure. So Arrive is a zero emission taxi app where we differ from what I guess we sort of build ourselves upon, in addition to sustainability, is the fact that we allow passengers to choose the driver for them. We've recently found the perfect launch partner for us to go live in. We're integrating in with their existing operation at the moment as we speak. We expect to be going live beginning of Q2, so okay. March, hopefully you'll be able to see us and experience the product.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, very exciting times indeed, that's for sure. Yeah,
I mean, it's when you're deploying a product like this, where you're effectively kind of creating a geospatial marketplace, there's a lot of challenges that you have to overcome, and we think that this launch partnership helps us get over the final hurdles.
No, definitely. And obviously one of the unique points about Arrive and the app is it seems that you've opted for a more family-friendly service, you know, something that you've integrated as well as having a female-friendly approach to it. Was that based off of bad experience in the past with cab drivers in London or other apps which are out there which employ taxi drivers, or did you purely see this as a gap in the market?
So I think with Arrive, where we really, the first problem that we wanted to solve was about transparency. At the moment, there's no real products that give people context to the quotes that or the services that are out there. You know, to be honest with you, when you're booking an Uber or a Lyft or whoever else you're using, you don't really know whether or not the price that you're getting is reasonable. You don't know whether that car is quick.
That's true.
You don't know whether the rating of the driver, well, you don't know the rating of the driver until you've booked anyway. So you're making decisions out of context. And I think a prominent British principle is, you know, we like to know what we're getting. So the whole transparency piece was something that was passionate for us, and the way that we wanted to solve that problem was by giving people comparables. Now, once you give people comparables, you allow service providers to differentiate themselves. Now, and then ultimately make a choice about what's important to yourself. Because somebody might want a quick cab, somebody might want a cheap cab, somebody might want a cab with an aux cable. So when we got to the point where we were really kind of breaking down the service providers' offerings to quite a granular level, we realized that this service can be anything for anyone. Now, how we kind of position this to be family friendly and also female friendly as well was the existing applications don't allow female passenger. They don't allow female passengers or anyone else for that matter to book with a female driver. Yeah. Now, our research told us that being able to choose a female driver. So, for example, for parents who want a driver to collect their kids for the school run. Yeah. Or for female drivers when, for female passengers when perhaps they're coming back from a night out. Yeah. The data told us that they would prefer to be able to choose a female driver. Now, when it really crystallized to me, we were happy to act just off the data alone. Yes. But when I really kind of understood, like where the value was, is on a pilot. So on the pilot, I was a driver. Okay. Now, 9 times out of the majority of the public, myself included, you know, we get into the back of a car. Yeah. And we're going from A to B, and you know, I'm quite a big dude. I'm quite able to look after myself. Yeah. So it's not really an intimidating situation for myself being in the back of a car. Sure. But when I became a driver, and I'm sat in the front, and I don't have eyes on the stranger at all times. That's true. And I'm in a relatively vulnerable position. Yeah. I started to realize, well, try not to swear here, but damn, like, you know, this can be intimidating. Of course. And then I started to think about it from the perspective of some of our user base. So I then thought back to how vulnerable groups may feel in this kind of quite enclosed environment. Yeah. And we thought, well, look, you know, being able to know the identity of your driver and choose the identity or choose a driver that makes you feel a bit more comfortable. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a female driver per se. It could be a driver who speaks the same language as yourself. You know, we're in London, which is a metropolis. Lots of different nationalities. You know, the ability to communicate precisely is pretty important.
Yeah, it is.
So if, for example, you are a native Spanish speaker or a native Lithuanian speaker.
Yes.
And you're able to now speak to your driver in
your native tone.
You're just going to be more comfortable.
Yeah.
So by kind of taking the decision-making process, the matching process, should I say, away from an algorithm, and putting it back into the hands of humans, they can now start to make the decisions based on what they want. And if it's comfort and security, they can choose that. If it's price, they can choose that. Speed of arrival, they can choose that.
It's perfect. It's perfect. No, you're right as well, because I know I use Uber from time to time. I don't as often now. However, a couple of great points you made there is this. I know through speaking with Uber drivers, the drivers aren't vetted. They're not vetted. It could be anybody. They can have this track record, that track record. It doesn't matter. They just don't vet them. So number one, there have been those issues before within the UK, also outside of the UK, Europe and
Asia as well.
Asia as well.
Nightmares.
You know, Australia too. You know, so where you've got those instances of you know, certain demographics, whether they be females or children, etc., who have felt vulnerable at times, and certain things have gone on which shouldn't go on. And even you make a great point here. Like my wife is from the Philippines, and so when she was learning to drive here, she specifically wanted to have a female driving instructor because she felt a lot more comfortable, a lot more in her element, and she felt like the job at hand would be a lot more professional. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on whatever you're comfortable with. And I think it's, I mean, if we think back to what almost everyone was told when they were younger, don't get into a stranger's car. But we do it now every single day, or at least a couple times a week.
Even with our kids sometimes, right?
With an Uber. So it's, it kind of links back to, I did a keynote last week at a conference, the Move 2020 conference.
Oh, lovely.
And I was talking about the importance of identity and safety in mobility. And one of the things that I touched on was the fact that if you look at what people typically do before they're about to do things they shouldn't, they take their identity away. You know, bank robbers don't go, they go in wearing a mask for a reason, right? Because it's anonymous. Correct. It means that they're not accountable. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, every Uber driver or driver of any other application for that matter is wholly unaccountable. But if you kind of look at it this way, if you're an Uber driver, whether you are a 4.9 rated driver who goes out of their way to deliver good value and be polite and courteous, or you're a 4.3 rated driver, and you generally deliver a pretty bad service, you don't get paid more, you don't get more work. There's no incentive for you to actually be a 4.9 rated driver apart from your own professional workmanship.
That's true.
So there's no accountability. Why would you invest more in getting your car cleaned and having a better car and taking the time to open the door? You know, where's the incentive to do that? Now, what we wanted to do was to create a meritocratic system that allowed those people who have a level of workmanship and professional pride to be able to monetize that. Because the reality of the situation is, when you use our product, when you see a driver who's a 9-star rated driver and you see a driver who's a 5-star rated driver, you will either be prepared to pay more for the 9-star rated driver, or if they're both priced at the same, you're going to choose a 9-star, right?
Yeah, of course.
The only way that the 5-star can compete with that 9-star rated driver is by reducing his price. And so you start to create, this system is both the carrot and the stick for the performance of drivers. Do you kind of get where we're going with this?
It's very smart.
So we create a self-regulating system, and we reward the drivers who go the extra mile.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No, very good. And obviously for myself, I do use, you know, Uber quite a lot anyway, and obviously I'm very excited and been waiting now for only a small period of time for your app to be live, because I can't wait to use it. So obviously for anybody who does have a smartphone, will it also include the likes of Samsung, or is it exclusively for the iPhone?
So at the moment, we only have an iPhone product. We have had an Android application live for a while, but we had to. Android is quite a tricky landscape to develop for, so we've had to make a few tweaks. That's currently still in a development cycle, but will be, with Android users on Samsung, HTC, all of the Android devices real soon.
Well, I definitely use the iPhone. Samsung for me is too difficult, too complex, too limited, in my opinion. But for anyone interested, this is what the app does look like. And once it goes live, there's going to be a lot of unique features that Hans will embellish on shortly. But obviously, looking at some of the reviews on the Apple App Store, you can see how people are already very excited by it. People have been able to save quite a bit of money compared to other companies out there. Again, even one comment was that you're able to include baby seats if people want to bring their children along in the taxi. So really, the sort of point of question I'm getting at is that what will Arrive do for commuters that most cannot do? Aside from the obvious Uber, how will Arrive stand out and compare, I suppose, with the so-called newer kids on the block, say like Bolt, Captain, Zoox, Wheelie, Viavan, My Taxi, etc.?
Ola, Easy Taxi, the list goes on and on and on. The first way that we will be able to compete is, first, we're different to Uber. We are fundamentally different. If you look at all of those other applications, what you've basically got is a rebranded Uber. You might have some small point of differentiation, but fundamentally they're all the same model. I'm very much a believer in innovation, and I think that if you're going into a market and you're not addressing things with at least a level of differentiation or additional value, what really is the point? Yeah. Especially if you're going up against a huge machine like Uber, who basically have more money than anyone else. So I'm not going to go against Goliath and try to outstrength him. Okay. I'm going to go against Goliath and try to outthink him.
Right. Wow.
So in the first instance, we're very different because, or we'll add value by being different. First, obviously, by the choice aspect that I covered earlier. Yeah. And effectively, the derivatives of allowing people to choose means that you can now see in advance whether the driver has an aux cable, whether the languages they speak, whether they've got a child seat or a booster seat, or they'll help you with your luggage, whether they have, whether they're pet friendly, the language is spoken, whether they'll even stop by a drive-through and let you eat in the car.
Oh wow!
And I know those use cases seem a little bit nuanced. Yeah. But with ride-hailing applications, one of the big things that they've done in urban areas is they've killed car ownership. And that's why you start to see loads of big OEMs starting to get into the space and back a lot of the ride-hailing apps. Because where they're starting to recognize, well, look, in London, it's mad expensive to have a car. You've got road tax, ULEZ, congestion charge, parking. It's generally congested, even as far out to zone 4. Yeah. New developments aren't being given residents permit badges.
That's true.
It's just a nightmare. Yeah. So people recognize, you know what? Instead of spending, 300-400 quid a month, or probably more than that, on maintaining a vehicle, I'm better off spending 200 quid a month on taxis. Yeah. So what these OEMs are starting to see is dwindling car ownership on a consumer level. Sure. Growing fleets. Yeah. So one of the things that Uber has done is London's private hire trade has grown in terms of the number of suppliers by 100% over the last 4 years. So basically the market has doubled in size. Yeah. And so now that people it's less frequent, or they don't own cars as much as they did even just like 8-10 years ago. People now want cars for different scenarios. You've got people who are after university, they're moving into a shared room. Now if they want to move from this house share with X amount of people to another house share, well, they have to get there somehow, right? And what are people doing? They're not jumping in cars because they don't own them. Yeah. They can't jump in their friends' cars because they don't own them. Yeah. They're getting Ubers there. Yeah. When they want to go to their mum's on a Sunday and they want to bring their French bulldog, their Frenchie, they're trying to take them in a car, right? In an Uber. So these use cases are becoming more and more nuanced. kind of like the concept of designated driver is absolutely dead now.
Yeah, it's true. No, you make a great point as well, because even like my sister, she lives in West Hampstead, and she's having to relocate slightly further down the road because she's moving from where she's been renting now somewhere else, but she wanted to stay within West Hampstead. But the bloody parking permit was going to cost 150, 180 a month.
Wow.
Just to park your car that you own outright. So she's like thinking now, do I really need this car? Do I really need it? Otherwise you may have to compromise from moving to a no-K area, say like West Hampstead, and like no offence to
Kilburn.
To Kilburn, exactly,
yeah.
Which is where she's having to move. But again, those extra costs are a pain in the backside, because London can be expensive anyway, let alone when you're running a vehicle, for sure. So,
and especially when you're not getting that utility, because most people who have private cars, their cars are dormant 94% of the time. They're only being used 6% of the time, right? Because when you're going to work, you're getting the tube.
Yeah.
You're not driving to work.
That's true.
So basically, you've got your car. And it happened to me when in a previous life, I used to be an investment banker.
Oh, wow.
I lived in Bow. We worked in a city. I had a nice BMW drop top, which I hardly ever drove. Especially, a drop top in London is pointless. I got to drop the top like at Christmas and on my birthday.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy. So, I was spending all this money for a car that was just parked up, and it wasn't justifiable.
No.
And that has only just gone on to, that problem has scaled as more and more legislation, anti-car legislation has been introduced.
Yeah. And everything seems to be getting taxed even more these days.
Yeah.
Next will be just for bloody breathing. But
and that car, or anyone's car, you're using 2 days a week max.
Tops, yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. And all right, moving on from that then. See, London seems to be more the focal point for when you do launch. Are there any other cities or countries that you're hoping to expand into, or is that a bit too premature to be looking at?
I think it's premature to look at, but in terms of where our vision is, this is a problem that exists everywhere.
Sure.
It literally exists everywhere. There's not a place in this world where there is a product like ours. And I think when you're an entrepreneur, you're guilty of definitely thinking big. I have to raise my hand. And I don't see a reason why Arrive could not be in any territory, domestic or otherwise, because the ride-hailing revolution it's ongoing everywhere. New York, for example, the yellow cab medallions, they were £1 million before ride-hailing kicked on. Now they're worth 300 grand.
Is that it?
Yeah, so you've got, it's just changing, it's disrupting everything. Huge global organizations like Toyota, Nissan, Honda, BMW, Daimler, all of these guys are trying to get a piece of the ride-hailing pie, because it's huge.
It is.
And it's changing everything and everywhere. Yeah. So to answer your question, we want to be everywhere. As once we prove London, and the reason why we think London is a great proof of concept for the rest of the world is because it is pretty much the ride-hailing capital of the world.
Massively.
Huge market, a very specific user base, both in terms of passengers but also drivers. You've got a two-tier system, so black taxis, public hire and private hire, which, by the way, we're the only application that allows you to compare both. So we can have black taxis on our our platform also. Once you get traction in London, it's certainly super hard, probably the hardest city to deploy, to launch. But once you crack it, you can go anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny what you mentioned there about being guilty of visualizing bigger and better things. I think a lot of what society likes to. So I spoke about this before on a previous podcast with Adrian Hoffman, but basically we were speaking about how, as an example, if you fail in life, you get rewarded for failing. Whereas somewhere like school, if you fail, you get punished for that. And again, at school, the kind of snip at your wings and teach you, think small, think practical, fall in line, do 2 times 2s, 4 times 4s, blah, blah, blah. You do that, go to college, go to uni, get a degree, and there's nothing wrong with that, for the record. There is nothing wrong with that. However, as I said, what the point I'm making is it does try and force down our throat. Don't dream too big, because you're never going to aspire to much, But I think the bigger you think, like you was mentioned about New York, one of the American saying is "go big or go home," and they're some of the best entrepreneurs and innovators out there. Whether you're looking at Silicon Valley or you look at the Forbes Rich List, the number of Americans on there, pretty significant.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think thinking big was, I think it's a part of who I am, but also, I mean, I would never have been able to conceptualize or visualize the concept of thinking, the concept of thinking big if it wasn't for certain people in my life. Like my mother, like she has, for me, it's like thinking about it, I'm kind of almost at a loss for words.
Okay.
Erin Brockovich has got absolutely nothing on what my mum has achieved. It's crazy. And once you see it with your own eyes, you just really believe that, wow, okay, like I can do it as well. You know, there's nothing, an example, when somebody sets an example like that, it's really hard to not think big.
Sure.
You know, my mother from an extremely underprivileged background went on to, you know, beat all types of illness. And earlier this year made the largest hire in McKinsey's history.
Wow. Brilliant.
Prior to that, she had deal history, which is, you know, pretty much unheard of in the executive search space. So I think going back to what you're saying about thinking big, when you kind of need somebody to show you that you can think big.
Definitely.
And if you are only shown, like you said, like at school and you know, institutions, where really what they're trying to do is, of course, they're trying to educate you, but they're also trying to socialize you to kind of fit into like a pigeonhole. Yeah. That goes on to contribute towards like a sustainable or a cohesive society.
Yeah.
Having disruptors, that doesn't bode well with that. You know, having somebody who wants to break the mold and be something different is not conducive to sort of like the wider stability.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so that's why I think it's the reason why I mentioned my mother is, of course, you know, I want to tip my hat to her, but also to explain to people that get your motivation from somewhere, and it's always going to be 9 times out of 10, it's going to be somebody.
Yeah.
I was privileged enough to grow up with a huge inspiration and a motivator.
Yeah.
But find your inspiration from anywhere, whether that's an athlete, whether that's somebody who you know, a friend of a friend. You know, for myself, there were 3 people who really kind of shaped my ability to visualize.
Okay.
The first one obviously was my mother.
Yeah.
The second one was the late Kobe Bryant, who passed away a couple of weeks ago in the helicopter accident. And also there was one of my advisors. I'm happy to say he's one of my advisors, a guy called Jim Turley, who lived opposite me, and was a global COO of Deutsche Bank.
Wow.
And having those 2 people, one by proxy, but 2 people, you know, in my everyday life, to be able to show me that, you know, these things that you're told are crazy aren't. They're huge.
What does Arrive stand for then in terms of an ethos?
For a lot of different reasons. But one of the things that I wanted to do was to make sure the people who participate in my marketplace get what they deserve. You know, if you work hard, you get paid well. You get rewarded for that. I think giving people a ladder and a carrot for good behavior is the only way that you're truly going to create something which is progressive. Without that, you know, what incentive do people have to kick on? You know, this whole concept of, okay, you know, be a good worker, be a good citizen, you're going to go to heaven. I think sort of that concept is slowly starting to, the power of that is starting to wane
now, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And people kind of, they want to see something real. And for us, it was about, you know, real rewards for real
people.
Yeah, for real, exactly.
Yeah.
So meritocracy is huge. Authenticity is something that's massive, which is kind of aligned with meritocracy. Mm-hmm. I mean, myself, I typically tend to just say it how I see it, be as honest as I can, as much as diplomacy allows. But yeah, authenticity, meritocracy, you know, they're 2 of the pillars that we're absolutely built on. We also like to do things that I believe that you should try and help people where you can. So as an organization, there's quite a few charitable things that we're involved with, initiatives that we're involved with. because, I think true progression isn't just about giving people what they deserve. It's sometimes about giving people a helping hand.
A hand up, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Massively.
And so that's a big part of what we are. I wouldn't go as far as to say that I am like the most. We could always be doing more, and we haven't.
100%.
We're still a commercial organisation, and we're very far from being a charity per se. There's people who are doing way more than myself, but I think I didn't want to found, should I say, a business that got a shit ton of money and then, in retrospect, wanted to pay for its sins.
Sure.
You see that a lot with some of the institutions I used to work in.
Yeah, you do.
A lot of big business. Yeah. They're just trying to find a way to stay compliant with their sustainability statement. Whereas with us, from the beginning, we wanted to make sure that we were aligned with what what society considers to be a good business.
Right. Well, definitely, and I think, like I said, you need to be the change that you want to see in people. And again, a lot of giving back, is a huge fundamental. It's something that myself and my partner were in the process of, eventually doing over in Southeast Asia. But again, like I said, it's all about how you can help people up, and in turn, the more people you help, you're going to be helping yourself too. So
business for a long time was about someone winning and someone losing. Yeah. For such a long time. If you look at it like, Marxist theory, the bourgeoisie and the proletariats, the agents of production, like so many people have that concept of that's how business needs to be. Okay, I need to, get one over on this guy to be able to, but it's not like that anymore.
No, it's not.
People, and the reason, it's weird in that now that people's attitudes have shifted, it's the guys who are being thoughtful, considerate and sustainable to the people in their environment and the environment themselves. They're the ones that are winning.
Yeah. It's true, because if everyone else is performing well, if everyone else is doing well within that industry or within that in life, if everyone else is winning, I suppose, then it's beneficial for everyone, isn't it? Because then everyone is more happy. It's not, I'm the big man, you're the small man, I'm the big woman, you're the small woman. Everyone is helping each other. And that's exactly what we need in today's society, for sure.
And people want to transact. They want to be patrons of brands that believe in that.
Yeah.
So it's weird. I just don't understand why business isn't built more around that. One of the big things in technology that you're taught is understand the user. Okay. And if you look at what users want today, millennials there's like a ton of Nielsen studies that demonstrate the importance to millennial customers of the companies that they transact with being morally just being moral, being moral and principled. And in turn, if you do adhere to that, you're more likely to get their business. I mean, like that, and that is not the reason why we do it.
Yeah,
we do it because it's the right thing to do. But if the byproduct of that is that more customers want to transact with us, then of course I'm not going to say no.
No, of course not. Of course, yeah. I mean, you did mention there as well. Of course, understand your users. That's a big advice in your respected field profession. What other advice would you give to anybody budding, should I say, tech or app newcomers, and not necessarily in your sphere, your sector, just in general? Anyone who's saying, you know what, I want to be the next Hans Manku, I want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, I want to be the next, Jeff Bezos of Amazon. But what would your advice be?
Well, thank you for putting me in such
I'm just hoping to get free rides. That's all I'm hoping
as Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. I mean, I think those guys will probably be able to tell you a lot about success and kind of like the scale-up journey. I think I'm probably quite well positioned to talk to people about the startup journey.
Sure.
This would probably even need like another session, but I think if I had to kind of boil it down, I would say pick something that you're passionate about.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because it's going to be hard and you're going to need to draw, like that passion is what will keep you going when there seems to be nothing else there. Passion is a massive derivative of belief. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I think it's really important to stay honest with yourself, because if the opportunity doesn't exist anymore, then don't waste time pursuing it. Life is way too short. You kind of have to always appraise do people want this? You have to validate it, and validating it once is not enough. You need to consistently be hyper open-minded, take on feedback from people, and also another thing is like, don't worry about, like, you got to just not worry about failing. Like, failure is an opportunity to learn. Loads of people have failed loads of times. You know, all these big names that we hear about, I refuse to accept that they've never failed before. Like, you just don't get it right the first time.
I think it was Thomas Edison. I think it was along the lines of failure.
Quote, but I can't repeat it myself.
Yeah, but basically something about like found 10,000 ways that didn't work, which simply carried on failing and failing and failing. So we had that light bulb moment, literally.
Yeah.
And you know, he revolutionised obviously
life.
Life, for sure. No, massively. All right. So apart from obviously, you know, what the Greta Thunbergs talk about and other people campaign about, for yourself, in your opinion, what can we do as humans to make the world more eco-friendly? How can we do our bit?
I mean, of course, I run a zero emission taxi app. Sustainability and charitability is important to us. I don't know whether I'm like I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to position myself as an authority on
Sure.
being noble, but I guess I suppose getting into good habits.
Okay.
It can just take sometimes like a really small adjustment to have like a huge impact on things.
Yeah.
Like the thing that sticks out to myself is I moved to a borough where you have to recycle.
Okay.
And that developed habits within myself that now, no matter where I am,
Okay.
I recycle. I just can't put it into just a regular bin. I need to sort it out.
Yeah.
So you know, that habit was built, was imposed, should I say, by the council that I work in, and then sort of manifested further on in my life. So in terms of how people can be more eco-friendly, I think getting into the habits that allow you to, on a day-to-day basis, reduce your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
You know, and not do the things that we've kind of been conditioned to do that damage the earth. I think that's probably the best way that.
Yeah, you're right, because that kind of leads on to my next question, because again, there are always going to be those challenges that will prevent us, I believe, from living that sort of healthier, cleaner lifestyle. But again, we are seeing those changes of I think more recyclable products. As an example, you can buy those like water bottles now, which are, I don't know, they don't use plastic, or I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Or you could buy like those sort of thermal coffee cups, which are made from, I don't know, avocado skins or coconut shells or whatever. But again, they seem to be a lot more popular. So it seems people are trying to make those changes, and they're aware that there are certain issues with,
And it's impacting further downstream. Yeah. Exactly.
Do you think that will change eventually, where we'll have, you know, to quote Michael Jackson, make the world a better place? Or,
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think when enough people start to prioritize sustainability, businesses start to listen. Because you have to remember, businesses are there to serve the people. So if everyone all of a sudden says, you know what, I'm not buying nothing that was made in a sweatshop, the businesses are going to stop producing things in sweatshops.
Yeah.
You're seeing like a huge rise in eco-consumerism. So Vegas, for example, they're a wicked shoe brand.
Okay.
They're a sustainable sneaker company, and their MO is act louder.
Right. Okay.
And you know, if everyone starts to like prioritize, there's like if the narrative starts to be that, you know, be like transacting with a non eco-friendly business is just not what you're supposed to do.
No.
Businesses will now start to become eco-friendly.
Yeah.
Because like I said before, you have to know your customer.
Yeah.
And if your customer is not down to buy from a business that doesn't value sustainability, well, sooner or later, either that business will become sustainable, or they'll die and they'll be taken. Their place will be taken by a company that is. Yeah. So I guess that sort of like feeds back into my original point about, you know, start to create these habits that reflect your attitudes, and things downstream will start to change.
Yeah. No, definitely. And all right. And lastly, have there been, or are there any books that have shaped your life in terms of your entrepreneurial
That's
career?
an interesting question. I say it through gritted teeth because I'm pretty sure everyone says it. But for me, it's like there's a couple of different meanings for it. So Sapiens, which you know everyone knows about, and it's so cliche to say, but the reality of the situation is, by looking at the precedent, you can start to understand the present and kind of predict the future.
Sure.
Another book that was really important for me was, and this one's a little bit out there, but I'll explain to you. It's a book called Prisoners of Geography.
Right. Okay.
And what it does is it talks about like the landscapes of the world. But after reading Sapiens and then reading that, you start to understand, you start to see similarities between the terrain and the culture. Mm-hmm. And you realize the importance of people's environment on how people are shaped. Yeah. And that to me was pretty mind-blowing, because I could start to see, wow, okay, people in this region have this behavior. Like, so for example, in northwest India, where my dad's from, mm-hmm. There's food in abundance. Yeah. Punjabi people are known to be extremely generous. Yeah, it's really easy to be generous when you've got when you've got everything that you need.
I hear that.
So you start to kind of like piece together things like that, and I think ultimately, when you're an entrepreneur, the main thing that you're trying to do is understand people, because you're building something for them. Sure. So like reading Prisoners of Geography after reading Sapiens was great. Yeah. Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff was a real game changer for me, because it helped me to understand how to frame like the vision. Mm-hmm. When you're an entrepreneur, your vision is kind of like opening Pandora's box. Sure. And what Oren does really well in that book is he helps you to know how, and I'm still working on it, but he helps you to understand how to frame all of this energy and excitement and vision into something that keeps people engaged. Yeah. Because it's really easy. I do it all the time. I've probably done it on this podcast where I've rambled on a little bit.
You've been good, honestly.
And people are just like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But what Pitch Anything does is helps you kind of harness that, which is an absolute must for entrepreneurs, I think.
No, brilliant. All right, perfect. Well, Hans, thank you once again for today. It's been very informative, very inspirational, very thought-provoking at times. So that is all from us for today. So thank you once again for tuning in. And until next time, all the